American pressure on Israel, not Israel, while visiting Israel, and unacceptable to Israel, to the land of Israel. Welcome to Eyes on Israel. I'm Rabbi Pesach Wolicki. Last week on the show, we spoke about a colonel who recently resigned his post in the IDF. His name was Chazi Nechama. And he went to the Israeli media, he went to the newspapers and to TV, and he spoke about a problem that he's seeing on the ground and was the reason for his resignation. He said that he spoke on behalf of 15 other colonels and hundreds of other officers who are in the field, who were expressing concerns about the fact that while the IDF, the way he put it, while the IDF is achieving tactical victories in every encounter with the enemy, there's a problem with the direction of the war from on high, such that these tactical victories, according to Chazi Nechama, Colonel Nechama, are not adding up to strategic victory. He specifically pointed out problems of conquering areas that are then not fully secured. And he also spoke about what we're doing in Rafah, the fact that in Rafah, known as Rafiach in Hebrew, the Israeli army, as we mentioned last week, scaled down its operation there because of pressure from the U.S. administration. If we put all the pieces together, there's a disturbing situation that's developing where while the Israeli army is, of course, making progress, the progress seems to have slowed. And most recently, just in the last couple of days, there's been an announcement that there will be daily pauses in the action in the southern Gaza area in order to allow for more humanitarian aid. And as we've spoken about on this show many times, the whole canard that not enough humanitarian aid is getting into Gaza is, of course, a falsehood meant to demonize Israel. And it would appear that this is also the result of pressure on the Israeli government from the Americans. Joining me now to sort this all out, and it's our honor to have him on Eyes on Israel, is retired Brigadier General Amir Avivi. General Avivi is chairman and founder of the Israel Defense and Security Forum. During his service, he held a series of senior roles in the IDF. I'm not going to read the whole resume right now, but suffice it to say, he was one of the top leaders in the IDF, including deputy commander of the Gaza division, very relevant to what we're dealing with now. The Israel Defense and Security Forum is a diverse movement led by women and men, senior officers from all branches of the Israel Defense Forces, and researchers, academics, as well as civilians from throughout Israeli society. The Israel Defense and Security Forum is focused on spreading the message that Israel's security must determine state policy. General Avivi, welcome to Eyes on Israel.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
So, General Avivi, you heard my tee up. Is that a correct assessment that we're not really playing to win? What's going wrong? What's going right? And what about what I said really needs to be cleared up?
Well, I think that, following the 7th of October, the terrible atrocities that we suffer, the kidnapping, the killing, the raping and everything, we started really a massive ground incursion into Gaza. And at the beginning, we fought very, very strongly, taking over with 3 divisions the whole northern part of the Gaza Strip. And then, we extended this ground incursion into Khan Yunis. But at a certain stage, maybe due to the international pressure, the US and so on, we saw this ground incursion getting slower and slower, reservists being sent home, less and less forces. And it seems that since then, really the war hasn't gone back to be intensive as it was at the beginning. And there is a very big gap between what the commanders in the field, in the Southern Command, in the Gaza Strip, are experiencing and feeling, and what is going on in the upper echelons in the Kiryat. And the feeling on the ground is that we can attack much strongly, that we should attack, simultaneously, at least with 2 divisions. That's what's planned from the beginning. and do a massive attack and not raids as we are seeing now. We see Division 162 fighting, but doing it with raids. Raids, it means you go in and out, and not a constant attack to really take over the whole of Rafah. There are areas in Rafah we haven't gone in yet. And if you don't attack from all sides and close on them, and reach the leadership and the hostages, this is not really achieving the goals of all in the pace and in the way it can be done. So it's not that we're not fighting, we're fighting. But this becomes a much prolonged fight. In a way, it also endangers more our soldiers, and it doesn't necessarily bring us closer to really destroying the leadership of Hamas and reaching all our hostages, or at least really putting such pressure on the leaders of Hamas that they will be willing to consider a hostage deal.
So, General Avivi, you've been in the room with the top echelons of the IDF, and you know the personalities there. You know the type of thinking that dominates the way they approach these issues. In your estimation, how much of this stopping and starting or scaling back is really coming from the attitudes of the current senior leadership, and how much of it do you think is coming from external political pressure from whether it's the Biden administration or the world?
Well, I think this is connected because how much pressure you feel from outside pressure, it's something very personal. How much you are willing to stand strong and say, this is existential with all due respect. We do what we need to do. We have a responsibility for the Israeli society. We have a responsibility for our soldiers, and we have to win a war. And I didn't see really the IDF being, the leadership of the IDF being the ones that really are pushing hard and, saying to the government, we want to attack stronger, give us the ability. It's not Rottweilers. I mean, my expectation from an army is to be really motivated, resolute, all the time, just thinking about one thing: how to destroy the enemy, how do we win decisively. And tell the politicians, you guys, that's your responsibility to create the international atmosphere for us. It's your responsibility to talk to President Biden or do whatever you need to do. We have a job. We have to kill the enemy. We have to take over the area. We have to win. Is this the mentality of the current leadership of the IDF? The answer is no. This is not the mentality. They sometimes behave as if they are the politicians. They have to take in consideration international pressure and so on. And they forget they are in uniform. They have to win wars. This is what they need to do, win wars.
So, General, turning our attention to the northern border, which is, of course, getting more and more intense every day, considering how things are going down south, it doesn't really fill us with confidence that we'll be able to do the job up north either.
I think we can do the job in the south and in the north. We have to really get our acts together and really attack fiercely in Rafah in a way that will bring a decisive win. And from there, we need to move most of our forces north. And unfortunately, I don't see any realistic scenario where we can push Hezbollah north of the Litani in a diplomatic way. There is no American leadership. They are not pressuring Iran. They are not pressuring Hezbollah. They are not willing to pose a military threat on Iran or Hezbollah. And this means that Israel, in order to restore the security to the citizens in the north, we need to go to a full-scale war. We need to attack Hezbollah. We need to do a ground incursion in South Lebanon and really destroy Hezbollah in this area and control it and create the terms needed to bring back the citizens home in the north.
So when you speak to your friends who are still in the senior leadership in the Israeli army, I'm sure you're still in touch with people. Do you get that same sense of frustration that Colonel Nechama expressed when he came out?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. We have commanders in the field that are highly motivated and really want to win decisively. And all they want is to be given the orders to do the job and bring victory to the people of Israel. We are not far away from it. I mean, the IDF has done a lot. We destroyed a huge part of Hamas as a terror organization, many achievements. I think most of the officers would agree. Maybe we could have done even better. But now it's a decisive moment, and we need to push hard and break this organization, win decisively, and deal with the North.
So, General Avivi, we only have about a minute left. If you could just tell our audience where they could follow the work of the Israel Defense and Security Forum and where they could follow you.
Yes, so our website is IDSF, Israel Defense and Security Forum.org.il, IDSF.org.il. There's huge amount of content we produce every day. We're every day on national TV, radio, newspapers. Our website is Hebrew and also English. We have a briefing we do every week, 4 times a week, Zoom briefing, really updating daily what's going on in Israel, and you're more than welcome to join us. We have many followers around the world.
All right, thank you, General Amir Avivi. Would love to have you back again. Thank you for joining Eyes on Israel. We'll be right back with more Eyes on Israel in just a few moments. Welcome back. Israel is under attack. Terrorists who want to murder Jews and Christians are trying their hardest to destroy Israel, and most countries of the world are helping them. Our own president, Joe Biden, has shamefully stabbed Israel in the back over and over. Now, more than ever, we must stand with Israel, and the best way to stand with Israel is to go to Israel. Join Rabbi Tuli Weiss and Israel 365 for an unforgettable mission to Israel that brings the ancient and modern stories of the Holy Land together. Experience the Bible firsthand on this incredible journey from the Galilee to the Gaza border to Judea and Samaria, Israel's biblical heartland. On this Heartland tour, you will meet real heroic Israelis fighting with incredible courage against Hamas and Hezbollah. Many have lost their loved ones and their homes. By coming to Israel and being part of this ministry of presence, you will give these heroes strength. Come to Israel now and fight back against Biden's disastrous two-state solution. We know that missions to Israel are expensive, and that's why we're offering flexible payment plans so you can pay in installments over 12 to 24 months. Everyone should have the opportunity to visit the Holy Land. Join us this August or October on a life-changing mission to Israel. Israel is counting on you. Book your trip today and stand with the people of the Promised Land. Go to Israel365.com/tours to find out more. That's Israel365.com/tours. 2 months ago on this program, we reported on Executive Order 14115 issued by President Biden, ordering sanctions on, quote, persons undermining peace, security, and stability in the West Bank. To review, this executive order is designed to silence any person or organization that would, quote, undermine the foreign policy objectives of the United States, including the viability of a two-state solution, end quote. This executive order further asserts, absurdly and without explanation, that activities of those in Israel who oppose a two-state solution pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. As we discussed at that time, the topic of our conversation a few months ago was the fact that the executive order is extremely vague and far-reaching, seemingly including within it anyone who would assist any organization openly opposed to a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria, which the Jordanians renamed the West Bank back in the 1950s. As the title clearly states, the executive order covers, quote, persons undermining peace, security, and stability in the West Bank, end quote. Gaza is mentioned only once in the preamble to the order, where it states that the problem being addressed has impact on the West Bank, Gaza, Israel, and the broader Middle East. I mention this because on June 14th, the State Department announced that it would be sanctioning a group called Tzav 9, or Tzav Tesha in Hebrew. This is a nonviolent movement founded by family members of Israeli hostages being held in Gaza that has been peacefully demonstrating to prevent the transfer of aid directly into the hands of Hamas. For months and months, we have heard the steady drumbeat in the media claiming that Gazans are starving because not enough humanitarian aid is being allowed in. Never mind the fact that the Biden administration and the UN have openly acknowledged and admitted that almost all the aid delivered into Gaza goes directly into the hands of Hamas. Bear in mind that the term humanitarian aid does not refer only to food and medical aid. A significant percentage of this aid is fuel that is used by Hamas to power their jihadist war machine. So, the Biden administration is now sanctioning nonviolent protesters who are trying to prevent the commission of a crime under U.S. law, namely the providing of material support to a terrorist organization, Hamas, in Gaza. But wait, didn't I just point out that the executive order is about activities in or pertaining to the West Bank? Why would protests at the Gaza border crossings be covered by this executive order? Well, here's where the Biden administration gets creative and shows us just how dangerous these vaguely written executive orders can be. On May 13th, a few Israeli kids in Judea and Samaria, erroneously called the West Bank, stopped a truck that they mistakenly thought was bringing humanitarian aid into Gaza. It wasn't. These kids also had no affiliation whatsoever with Tzav 9, who operate only along the Gaza border. But never mind the facts. The Biden administration used this incident of a few kids misbehaving as a pretext to impose sanctions on Tzav 9 and all who would assist them. See how this works? An executive order calling for sanctions on those who would undermine peace and stability in the West Bank is used now to sanction a group of nonviolent protesters attempting to prevent aid from falling into the hands of Hamas, a designated foreign terrorist organization, which according to 18 U.S.C. 2339 A and B, the provision of aid or support for such an organization is a federal crime. So the people protesting the illegal transfer of aid to terrorists in Gaza are sanctioned based on an executive order that is supposed to be about peace and stability in the West Bank. Make sense? Sure it does. Joining me now is Rachel Twito, who is spokesperson for Tzav 9, and she joins us here on Eyes on Israel. Rachel, welcome to Eyes on Israel.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
So, Rachel, you heard my tee up, and people watching the news or hearing about this have seen clips of these protesters, these Israeli protesters who are ostensibly preventing humanitarian aid from getting to the starving Gazans, and they paint you as terrorists. Tell us more about Tzav 9. Why were you founded, and what is the case that you're actually making?
Sure. So Tzav 9 has been born in January, couple of months after the beginning of the war, after one specific and very clear statement that has been sent from Ronen Bar, the head of the Shin Bet in Israel. He said, from Israel's knowledge, up to 68% of the humanitarian aid convoys are being hijacked by Hamas. I'm sure that he thought back then that it would fall on a deaf ear, but it has not, because in Israel, we are all involved in this war. We all feel the consequences of the war. We have either sons, daughters, family members serving in the army or hostages. So that's how Tzav 9 has been born, basically, out of the necessity and out of the need of the civilians in Israel to make sure that this humanitarian help and aid should go to the right hands and not fall into the terrorists that we are fighting. That's basically the initiative.
So, Rachel, you guys aren't trying to starve Gazans. You're just trying to stop supplying Hamas.
Absolutely. Exactly. We've been working very hard to make sure that this message, which, by the way, represents up to 80% of the Israeli society, we all agree from left to right, and our organization, our movement, represent these families from left to right, secular, religious, families of hostages that join us in our actions. And we've been trying to send this message very clear. The same message that Antony Blinken himself said on October 17, after a meeting in Israel with the Cabinet of War. He says that if he knew and if the U.S. administration ever hears about Hamas hijacking humanitarian help, they would be the first to condemn it and the first to prevent this from continuing and happening. We have not seen any action preventing Hamas from hijacking the aid. And basically, when he condemns Tzav 9, he condemns the Israeli society.
Wow. So Secretary of State Blinken actually said that if they found out that any of the aid was going to Hamas, they would take steps to prevent it. They haven't done so. And those of you who are now peacefully trying to prevent it are being sanctioned by the U.S. administration. So tell me about the sanctions. Tell me about what this means. We have about 2.5 minutes left. How have these sanctions been received by the people in Tzav 9, and what are you guys doing to fight back?
Well, first of all, the sanctions, we learned about that an hour before Shabbat on Friday afternoon. My guess it was intentioned by them to send this news right before Shabbat. So we have now a legal team that is, they have been firing an official letter to the State of Department to really understand what does that mean. Because sanctioning Tzav 9, we are a movement, a citizen movement. We're not a formal, legal entity in Israel. What does that mean? Do they sanction me as a spokesperson personally? Do they sanction the heads of Tzav 9? Do they sanction the 15,000 people who follow Tzav 9? Because again, this is maybe your audience needs to understand that Tzav 9, in the recent polls that we've done, we represent 80% of the Israeli society. It sends a clear and very bad message to Israel, and we are supposed to be friends and the greatest ally of the U.S. in the Middle East. What kind of message does that send to the families of hostages who fight with, endless passions and endless, their families are there hostages for 9 months with no news. They do not receive humanitarian help. We know from hostages who have been released and freed by Tzal and and the first exchange that we did 6 months ago, that these hostages do not receive. They live on a pita a day, maybe less. And this is us that the U.S. administration is sanctioning right now. Israeli law-obedient citizens, I myself, I can tell you, and I'll sign it 100%, Tzav 9 is not engaging in any violent protest. All we do is almost, we can say, even pacifist protest. By our mere presence in front of Kerem Shalom, and like you said earlier, it's not beyond the 67 borders, it's inside Israel. We've been protesting and using what would be in the US, the First Amendment rights, free speech. This is free speech. And not only Biden is not respecting our free speech, he's also entraving into the Israeli society and into the Israeli sovereignty, asking for sanctions on Israeli civilians, law-abiding civilians, paying tax civilians, people who serve in the army, who have families right now fighting in Gaza. And it's just unacceptable, and we're going to fight it.
All right, Rachel Twito, we have about 5 seconds left. Just tell us where people can follow you on social media. And thank you for joining us on Eyes on Israel.
We don't have free speech here right now, but we are on social media in X and on Twitter, and we have a WhatsApp group as well. You can contact me on private, and I'll try to add you to the groups.
All right. Thank you very much, Rachel Twito. We'll be right back with more Eyes on Israel in just a moment. Welcome back to Eyes on Israel. On the recent special that I had the privilege of co-hosting with Steve Bannon, where we spoke about the Jewish electorate and issues that relate to the Jewish electorate, Rabbi Michael Barkley from Los Angeles brought up the fact that Donald Trump passed an executive order that had a great impact on the Jewish community. What I'm referring to, or what he was referring to, is that before Donald Trump was president of the United States, Title VI, which is the Civil Rights Act, which protects people on the basis of race, color, and national origin, it protects people from discrimination on that basis, did not include discrimination based on religion. And therefore, it was an ambiguous situation regarding Jews, and really Title VI did not cover Jews. And Donald Trump passed an executive order on December 11th, 2019, including Jewish identity in Title VI. Now, what's so interesting about that is that this was passed in 2019, and right now, in an election year where Donald Trump is once again running for president, this fact that he passed this executive order putting Jewish identity into Title VI has become more relevant than ever. You might remember a number of weeks ago when we covered the whole issue of the campus protests that are going on, all these pro-Hamas campus protests and the discrimination against Jews on campus. We even played an audio recording of a Jewish mother talking to the campus police at UCLA and discovering that the university itself was telling the police to back off and basically allow the pro-Hamas protesters to make the lives of the Jewish students more difficult, preventing them from going to class, etc. As a result of all this going on this year, with so many Jewish students being harassed on their campuses, there are lawsuits being filed all over the country against these college administrations and other bodies that have been discriminating against Jews. The only reason these lawsuits can even be filed is because Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, included Jewish identity in Title VI. Joining me now is National Committee Woman for the state of Nevada for the GOP, Sigal Chattah, who is also an attorney who is in the process of representing a Jewish student in a case exactly like this. And I should also mention that Sigal is an Israeli-born American, the highest-ranking elected official as a National Committee Woman for the GOP. She's the highest. She holds the highest office of any Israeli-born American, I think, ever. So, Sigal, welcome to Eyes on Israel.
Hi, good morning from Las Vegas.
It's great.
Erev Tov.
It's great to have you here. And for those of you who don't understand, she just wished me a good evening in Hebrew because I'm in Israel 10 hours ahead of you. So it's great that the miracles of modern technology, we can talk. It's great to have you here. So Sigal, you heard my tee up. Can you talk about this court case that you're involved in? What's going on with this Jewish student who was discriminated against?
So this court case is like many of the ones that are currently being filed by Brandeis and other organizations against university, against the UC system, against Columbia. Basically, what we saw after October 7th was that student protests, or actually, as we found out as these protests progressed, that they're non-student protests. They're other organizations that align themselves and implant themselves in the universities to really wreak havoc on the university and protest against October 7th and chanting from the river to the sea, harassing the Jewish students. My plaintiff is a Jewish student that is practicing, and he wears a yarmulke to school every day at UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And from October 7th and on, the harassment against him, he is also in student government. So there's like a university senate and, there's student body president. So there's an active student government, which basically he has been harassed nonstop since October 7th. And the regions there, they're so detached and untethered to the reality of what Title VI actually protects that as recently as last week, we had regions say, well, we just don't understand the whole cause of the anti-Semitism. We don't really understand what's going on as far as October 7th is concerned. We had one of the regents, and this is last week, say that, well, Jewish students need to just have thicker skin and they need to get in line after the African American students. I mean, it is so blatant and it comes from the top. So we filed a lawsuit against the university because this kind of rhetoric is just completely intolerable. And we're also seeing organizations like Students for Justice of Palestine. We're seeing nexuses between Hamas activity in Gaza and calls to action, and Students for Justice of Palestine, and national pro-Palestinian organizations that are funding these things on university campuses. The lawsuit is a 72-page complaint. It's very detailed, and I think that's what you're gonna see come out of other universities across the country.
So Sigal, what is the specific remedy that the lawsuit seeks? That's what and I guess what I'm also asking is, what are the defendant in the case is the university administration, as I understand. So what is now, is the complaint just that they're turning a blind eye to things, or does the complaint allege also that there are certain policies or things that they've actually done?
So there's different types of remedies that are sought. One of the remedies is to kick off Students for Justice of Palestine through National Students of Justice of Palestine. They have a UNLV chapter. That's one of the remedies, is to get them off campus. And the reason that we want them off campus is because we know they're funded by the American Palestinian movement, which gets its funding from different Qatari organizations. And, they're so layered. So we want to get all these movements off. Now, as far as the Title VII remedy, yes, we're asking for punitive damages because the university itself is cultivating an environment where there is hostility against Jewish students. So, and for those remedies go directly at the university and the university president.
Well, God bless you for doing that. Sigal, we have about 4 minutes left, and I want to switch gears. You are the National Committee Woman for the state of Nevada for the GOP. You're also one of the leaders of the Israeli American community, which is a growing community, a community that only in recent years has become an organized community. And although the vast majority, of course, of Israeli Americans are also Jewish, kind of operate as your own community, and like the kind of left-wing liberal trends that you see among most American Jews, I understand that you don't really see among Israelis. We've talked a lot recently on this show and on that special I did with Bannon about the American Jewish electorate. Can you fill us in a little bit, educate our viewers about what is the makeup of the Israeli American electorate, and how is it similar or different than the larger Jewish population?
Well, there's always going to be a difference between the Israeli community and the American Jewish community. It's not necessarily a bad difference, but I think, the way I've always looked at it, as American Jews have always been the ones with the money, the financing to assist the state of Israel in the defense, and kind of through a private sector, right? The lobbying organizations like AIPAC, and the the Israelis have always had the sweat equity type of mentality where, the Israelis, they're the ones that are actually the soldiers. They're the ones that are protecting the country, and, the mandatory conscription coming out of Israel. So it's a different type of mentality. I think both share a love for Israel. I think one of the things that you said on the show, or I don't remember if it was actually Mark that said it, that the more that, American Jewry departs from the actual religious component, the less support they have for Israel. And that's how we're seeing all these schisms in universities and American organizations. I think, the way the president captures the Jewish American community is really the national security component. And we've all beat it completely 1,000 times over, right? A secure Israel is a secure world. So I think that's the way we go about it.
All right, Sigal, a quick one. Is the Israeli American community more Republican? Are they more Trump supporting than the larger Jewish community? Or are they kind of aligned along the same type of percentages?
I think the Israeli American community is by far more Republican. I think it's like shooting fish in a barrel, getting Israelis to vote for Trump. It's not a problem. The American Jewish community is one that we have to put a dent in and we have to work on.
Amen. All right, Sigal, a few seconds left. Let everyone know how they can follow you and encourage everyone to get involved in the Republican Party. We need more people like you. We need more Jews in there. So again, tell us what your coordinates are. We want everyone to, to follow you on Twitter or wherever else you are.
So my coordinates are Chatter for Nevada. I'm on Twitter, Getter, Social, Facebook, even the archaic Facebook. And I do want to tell people to understand that if Israeli Americans don't get involved, if Jewish Americans don't get involved, Israel has to survive. And this is a question of survival for the Jewish people.
Amen.
It's not only about America, it's about the survival of the Jewish people.
Sigal Chattah, it's been an honor. Thank you so much for being with us on Eyes on Israel.
Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
We'll be right back with more Eyes on Israel in just a moment. Welcome back. Bible lovers yearn to uncover the authentic meaning of the Hebrew Bible, but often feel stuck with English translations. There's so much more to discover, but they don't know the Hebrew. Israel 365 has the perfect solution. Israel Bible Plus. Israel Bible Plus is a revolutionary way to access the treasure trove of Hebrew Bible wisdom no matter where you are in the world. With a subscription to Israel Bible Plus, you'll gain exclusive access to premium video courses from top Bible educators in Israel. These scholars will unlock the secrets of the Bible and transform your understanding of Scripture. You can't find courses like these anywhere else. But that's not all. Every month, you'll receive a new lightweight volume of the Israel Bible in a stunning full-color design. It's not just a Bible, it's a personal study companion with space for note-taking, maps, charts, transliterations. You can take it anywhere. Transform your Bible study experience today. Sign up for Israel Bible Plus and uncover the true depths of Scripture. Your journey to a deeper understanding starts right now. Sign up for Israel Bible Plus today at Israel365store.com. That's Israel365store.com. Last week, we studied the first of the 3 verses in Numbers chapter 6 that are known as the priestly blessing. This is the blessing that God commanded Aaron, the high priest, and his sons after him to recite as a blessing over the people of Israel. As I mentioned last week, this blessing is still recited as part of the synagogue prayer service to this very day. If you missed last week's teaching on the first verse of the priestly blessing, be sure to go check that out. So the second verse, Numbers chapter 6, verse 25, reads as follows: "The Lord shall shine his face towards you, and he shall be gracious to you." This second verse of the priestly blessing, just like the previous one, is made up of 2 statements. Like the first one, here too we see 2 blessings that God will bestow on those being blessed. He will shine his face towards them, and he will be gracious to them. So what exactly does this blessing mean? The previous verse described God blessing and protecting those who are blessed. And as we discussed, the word bless in that verse refers to abundance. The blessing of that verse, abundance, and protection, are easily understandable to us. In this verse, by contrast, God promises to shine his face towards you and be gracious to you. So what does it mean for God to shine his face towards someone? It sounds very biblical, but what does it mean? Does it give them wisdom, happiness, success, strength, prophetic power? It's unclear. The immediate context of the verse does not provide any clarity on the matter either. The second half of the verse, the second blessing in the verse, says, "He shall be gracious to you." It's also unclear, but for a different reason. Let me explain. The Hebrew word used here can be interpreted grammatically in a number of different ways. The Hebrew word for "he shall be gracious to you" is vichuneka. The first syllable, vi, is the Hebrew prefix meaning and. The final syllable, ka, means you. And the middle of the word, that's where the root is, the verb root, is chen, vichuneka. This root has several possible meanings. Here are 2 examples to illustrate the point, among many in the Bible where this word root, this verb, is used. Here's one. As the eyes of a maid to the hand of her mistress, so our eyes look to you, Lord our God, until he has mercy on us. Ad sheyichonenu. Same verb as in our verse, and here it means to have mercy on us. We're asking God for something, and he will have mercy on us, and that's the meaning of the word. Another verse, and this one's from the book of Esther. Quote, and Esther obtained favor in the sight of all who saw her. And the word here for favor is the word chen. So again, just to sum up, in the quote from Psalm 123 that I just read, the root chen means mercy or compassion. In the verse from Esther, the meaning of chen is favor, meaning that Esther was admired and liked by other people. There are numerous examples in Scripture of both meanings of this root. So without getting into the technicalities of Hebrew conjugation, let's just say that it's unclear which meaning is correct for our verse. The root of the word vichuneka, and he shall be gracious to you, is either grace or favor. So our verse is promising either that God will have mercy on those who he is blessing, or that he will grant them favor in the eyes of others, like the example from Esther. This leads to another question. How would either of these options relate to the first half of the verse, the Lord shall shine his face towards you? Perhaps we could determine which translation in the second half is correct by answering this question. Besides this verse here in Numbers chapter 6, there are 7 verses in the Bible, that's all, just 7, that refer to God shining his face. In 5 of those 7 examples where God shines his face in the Bible, the context is God's redemption of Israel from exile and redemption from the oppression at the hands of other nations. 3 of those 5 are all in the same chapter of Psalms, Psalm 80. And the phrase that keeps repeating in that psalm is, cause your face to shine, and we shall be saved or redeemed. And that appears 3 times in that one psalm. The other verses that refer to the redemption of Israel are Daniel chapter 9, verse 17. Quote, now therefore, our God, hear the prayer of your servant and his supplications, and for the Lord's sake, cause your face to shine on your sanctuary, which is desolate. And we see this also in Psalm 67, verse 1. God be merciful to us and bless us and cause his face to shine upon us, Selah, that your way may be known on the earth, your salvation among the nations. The remaining 2 verses that refer to God shining his face describe a personal, private redemption and salvation from enemies. Quote, deliver me from the hand of my enemies and from those who persecute me. Make your face shine upon your servant. Save me for your mercy's sake. Pretty clear. And another one is, redeem me from the oppression of man, that I may keep your precepts. Make your face shine upon your servant, and teach me your statutes. To sum up, when the Bible describes God shining his face, it means that God is saving or restoring Israel or an individual from exile or oppression. That said, if we look more closely at these verses, there is another important dimension to the meaning. The redemption of Israel is never stated as a final goal in and of itself. The redemption of Israel is in order to bring about the ultimate kingdom of God on earth. We see this in Daniel, where we just quoted, where we find Daniel praying not only for the end of the exile for the Jewish people, but for the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. On the personal level, the verse that we just quoted from Psalm 119 describes redemption from enemies in order to be free to serve God by keeping the commandments. In other words, when someone in the Bible prays to God for God to shine his face, the meaning of the prayer is that God should redeem or save the supplicant so that he can accomplish a higher goal in serving God. The implication is that God shining his face means that God saves someone so that they can serve a higher purpose. This is most evident in Psalm 67 that we mentioned before. God be merciful to us, bless us, cause his face to shine upon us, Selah, that your way may be known on earth, your salvation among all nations. Let the peoples praise you, O God. Let all the peoples praise you. Here, the stated purpose of the redemption of Israel is the universal goal of all nations and all peoples praising and worshiping the God of Israel. So what does our verse mean? Keeping in mind that Israel's mission is to bring all humanity to faith in God, we can now return to our verse in number 6, in the priestly blessing. So I'd like to suggest the meaning of this verse is as follows. The Lord shall shine his face towards you. In other words, God will redeem you from exile and oppression, and he'll be gracious to you. He'll grant you favor in the eyes of others so that you will be able to have influence upon them to have faith in the God of Israel. Seen this way, the second half of the verse should be translated, and he shall grant you favor. In fact, a number of the traditional Jewish commentaries understand the verse exactly this way. This is an important lesson for all people of faith. Even as we pray to God to bless us and redeem us from trouble and enemies, from oppression, we must remember that the purpose of redemption, the redemption for which we pray, is that when God grants us freedom and elevates us to a position of liberty and autonomy and influence, we must use those gifts to build his kingdom. God's blessing in this verse is that he will redeem us from that which oppresses us. He will then give us favor in the eyes of others so that we can influence them and bring them to faith in the God of Israel. If you enjoyed this teaching, if you enjoy the Bible teachings that we do on Eyes on Israel, please be sure to check out my latest book, Verses for Zion. Verses for Zion is a book of teachings of my own original Bible teachings, much like this one, digging into the Hebrew. You could pick up your copy of Verses for Zion at getvfz.com. That's getvfz, Verses for Zion, getvfz.com. You could pick up your copy, a great way to support the show and a great way to get inspired with messages from the Bible about the land, people, and God of Israel. If you would like more of my biblical teachings, these teachings that are rooted in the original Hebrew meaning, be sure to order a copy of my recent book, Verses for Zion. Verses for Zion contains 77 devotional teachings, each a few pages long, that draw out lessons of the biblical text that lie beneath the surface of the original Hebrew. Verses for Zion is available on Amazon or at getvfz.com. That's getvfz.com. Thank you so much for watching Eyes on Israel. We'll see you next week.